If you've ever wondered why single older men seem calmer, wiser, and harder to impress, it's because they've learned the lessons most people never take the time to understand. They're not avoiding love, they're protecting their peace. And when they do love, it's real, deep, and intentional. So if this message spoke to you, if you see yourself in these truths, or you're learning to value peace over pretense, then hit that subscribe button. Because here we dive deep into the real psychology behind relationships, self-worth, and emotional growth. Stay grounded, stay wise, and remember, peace isn't loneliness, it's power. Emotional intelligence in older single men is one of the most powerful yet overlooked aspects of their personality. Over the years, these men have gone through life's trials, heartbreaks, failed relationships, responsibilities, and lessons that force them to grow emotionally. Unlike younger men who often act on impulse or ego, older men have learned to understand and manage their emotions with greater control and awareness. They don't react, they reflect. They don't chase validation, they value connection. Through pain and experience, they've discovered that emotional peace is not something you find in others. It's something you build within yourself. That self-awareness changes everything about how they love and who they allow into their lives. When an older man has been through enough emotional chaos, he becomes allergic to unnecessary drama. He's seen how arguments over small things can destroy good relationships, how manipulation can mask as affection, and how emotional games can drain one's energy. He no longer wants a relationship that feels like a battlefield. He wants a partnership that feels like home. Emotional intelligence teaches him to identify patterns early, to recognize when a connection is healthy or toxic. That's why he no longer falls easily for surface-level charm or temporary excitement. He listens not just to words, but to consistency, tone, and action. This kind of man understands that love without emotional peace is not worth the emotional price. He knows what it's like to stay in relationships out of guilt, fear, or loneliness, and he refuses to repeat that mistake. He's not trying to impress anyone anymore. He's trying to protect his peace. That's not arrogance, that's wisdom. His emotional maturity allows him to set healthy boundaries without guilt. He doesn't chase approval or play mind games because he understands that honesty and respect are the foundation of real intimacy. When he communicates, he does it calmly, clearly, and with purpose. He's learned that shouting doesn't make you heard. Emotional clarity does. One of the strongest signs of emotional intelligence in older men is their ability to take responsibility for their part in past failures. Instead of blaming their exes or life circumstances, they reflect on their own behavior. They ask themselves, what could I have done differently? That self-reflection builds humility and emotional depth. It also gives them empathy. They can see things from both sides. They understand that everyone carries emotional scars, and that makes them more patient, more compassionate, and less judgmental in relationships. When an emotionally intelligent older man loves, he does so with awareness. He doesn't love to fill a void. He loves to grow with someone. He's not looking for someone to complete him. He's looking for someone who complements his peace. He's calm, confident, and emotionally grounded. He doesn't need to control his partner because he controls himself. And that's what makes his love so powerful. It's not rooted in insecurity or ego, but in understanding and emotional strength. Self-awareness is one of the most defining qualities of single older men, and it shapes every aspect of how they approach relationships. Over time, they've had the space and experiences necessary to truly understand themselves. their strengths, their flaws, their triggers, and their needs. When a man reaches a certain stage in life, he's usually gone through enough emotional highs and lows to realize what he values most. He's seen what happens when he ignores his intuition, compromises too much, or tries to please others at the expense of his own peace. That self-awareness doesn't just change how he loves, it changes who he chooses to love. Unlike in younger years, when men often enter relationships seeking validation or trying to prove something, older single men approach love from a place of emotional independence. They no longer feel the need to impress anyone or live up to society's timeline of marriage or partnership. They know that real connection can't be forced. It has to feel natural and aligned. Their self-awareness gives them the confidence to walk away from situations that don't feel right, even if they're lonely. They understand that being alone isn't nearly as painful as being with the wrong person. That kind of emotional clarity is rare, but it's earned through years of self-reflection and experience. Older single men also understand the importance of emotional boundaries. They know what kind of energy drains them and what kind of energy inspires them. They can identify emotional manipulation, passive aggression, and immaturity early on. And they don't make excuses for it. This doesn't make them cold or detached. It makes them selective. They're not afraid to say no to relationships that don't align with their emotional values. They understand that peace is not something they can negotiate. It's something they protect. This level of discernment may be mistaken for pickiness, but it's really a reflection of deep self-respect. Another aspect of self-awareness in older men is emotional accountability. They've learned to own their mistakes instead of hiding from them. They can admit when they were wrong, apologize sincerely, and learn from the experience. That humility makes them emotionally trustworthy. They don't project their insecurities onto others or blame their partners for everything. They've done the inner work, the kind that takes honesty and courage. And because they face their own shadows, they're better equipped to handle someone else's. When an older man is self-aware, he doesn't seek relationships for validation, distraction, or ego. He seeks them for growth, companionship, and shared peace. He understands that love isn't about constant excitement, but about emotional alignment. He values depth over intensity, calm over chaos, and truth over comfort. His self-awareness allows him to love without losing himself, to connect without dependency, and to give without expecting control. It's not that he's afraid of commitment. He's just committed to the right kind of love, one that feels authentic, stable, and real. As men grow older, their relationship priorities begin to shift in profound ways. What once excited them in their 20s or 30s no longer holds the same meaning. When they were younger, attraction was often fueled by surface-level qualities, looks, charm, excitement, or the thrill of the chase. But as time goes on, older single men start valuing something deeper, something more sustaining. They begin to understand that beauty fades, chemistry can waver, but compatibility and emotional peace have lasting power. For them, love isn't about how someone makes them feel for a moment. It's about how that person fits into the rhythm of their life. Older men no longer want to compete for attention or prove their worth in relationships. They've likely experienced what it's like to be with someone who drains them emotionally or disrupts their peace, and they refuse to repeat that pattern. They want a partner who brings calm, not chaos. Emotional safety becomes more attractive than physical attraction alone. They're drawn to women who have self-control, kindness, and emotional depth. A mature man understands that true intimacy doesn't come from constant excitement or lust. It comes from trust, communication, and consistency. He values connection over conquest. This shift in priorities also changes the way older men approach dating. They're not looking for a relationship to fill a void or fix their loneliness. They're looking for someone whose presence complements their life, not complicates it. They don't measure love in grand gestures or constant attention. They measure it in peace of mind, mutual respect, and shared growth. That's why many older single men are cautious when it comes to opening up. They've learned that emotional compatibility is more important than immediate attraction. If the energy feels heavy, dramatic, or unpredictable, they step back. Not because they're afraid of love, but because they understand the cost of giving their heart to the wrong person. Another major change in their priorities is their focus on shared values. Older men have lived long enough to realize that alignment in lifestyle, mindset, and goals matters more than anything else. They no longer want to argue about the basics: communication, honesty, or respect. They know that these things are non-negotiable. They want a partner who grows with them, not one who drains them with constant emotional friction. This doesn't mean they don't enjoy passion or excitement. It just means they want those things to exist within stability, not chaos. At this stage, love for older men becomes quieter but more meaningful. They're not chasing butterflies, they're building peace. They've learned that consistency is the most romantic thing a person can offer. So when they find someone who values harmony, respect, and emotional depth, they give their best self. Their love becomes intentional, grounded, and pure, a reflection of everything they've learned about what truly matters in a relationship. Many people assume that older single men are alone because they couldn't find love. But in truth, a large number of them are single by choice. They've reached a point in life where they would rather have peace than pretense, solitude than stress, and authenticity over obligation. After years of experiences, both good and bad, they've learned that being single doesn't mean being lonely. It means being selective. It means choosing to protect their emotional well-being rather than staying in a relationship that feels draining or fake. This mindset shift is one of the most powerful signs of emotional maturity. Older men who have experienced toxic or unbalanced relationships understand how exhausting it can be to constantly compromise their peace just to keep someone else happy. They've lived through situations where they had to give too much, explain too much, or tolerate too much. And eventually they realize that love shouldn't require losing yourself. So instead of chasing companionship for the sake of appearance or validation, they now prioritize inner calm. They've come to see solitude as something sacred, a space to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with who they are. When an older man chooses to be single, it's often because he understands the difference between loneliness and peace. Loneliness is when you crave company, even if it's the wrong kind. Peace is when you enjoy your own company and refuse to settle for less. That doesn't mean these men have closed themselves off to love. They've just become wiser about where they invest their time and emotions. They're not looking for someone to complete them because they already feel complete. They're looking for someone whose presence feels natural, not forced. This type of man isn't afraid of silence or space. He's not constantly chasing attention or validation because he's already comfortable in his own identity. When he does open up to someone, it's because he genuinely wants connection, not distraction. And that's what makes his relationships deeper and more meaningful when they do happen. He values authenticity. He wants to be with someone who's honest, grounded, and emotionally mature enough to handle life's ups and downs without constant drama. People sometimes misunderstand these men as emotionally distant. But the truth is, they've simply learned emotional discipline. They've seen the damage that comes from staying in relationships for the wrong reasons, fear of being alone, social pressure, or temporary comfort. Now, they choose differently. They choose peace, they choose self-respect, they choose to wait for a connection that feels aligned rather than rush into something that looks good on the outside but feels empty on the inside. Being single for an older man isn't a failure. It's freedom. It's the freedom to live life on his own terms, to love himself enough not to settle, and to hold space for a love that matches his maturity and peace. In a world that glorifies constant connection, his ability to stand content in solitude is a quiet form of strength. As men grow older, their understanding of time changes, and with that comes a deep shift in how they approach relationships. They've lived long enough to realize that time is the most valuable thing they have. And unlike money, energy, or attention, once it's gone, it can never be replaced. This awareness makes them far more intentional about who they give their time to and how they spend it. In their younger years, they may have invested months or even years in relationships that went nowhere, hoping things would change or that love could fix incompatibility. But with age comes clarity, and older single men no longer see the point in forcing something that isn't meant to be. Older men have learned to recognize emotional patterns early. They can tell when a relationship has potential and when it's only taking up emotional space. They're not interested in chasing or proving themselves because they've realized that mutual effort is what sustains a relationship. If a woman isn't matching their energy, communicating openly, or showing genuine interest, they don't waste time trying to convince her. They simply walk away. This isn't arrogance. It's wisdom earned through experience. They've seen how people waste years trying to make broken things work, and they refuse to repeat that mistake. Time has also taught them patience, but not passivity. They're patient with people who are sincere, not with situations that drain them. They know that peace of mind and emotional balance are worth protecting at all costs. When an older man commits to someone, he does it with intention, not because he's lonely, not because of pressure, but because he truly values the connection. He no longer views love as a race or a checklist to complete. He views it as a partnership that deserves time, respect, and effort from both sides. Another key realization for older single men is that time spent alone can be just as meaningful as time spent in a relationship. They don't fear solitude anymore. In fact, they use it to grow, to pursue their passions, to heal, and to understand themselves better. They've come to see that being alone isn't wasted time. It's time well spent if it brings self-awareness and peace. That's why they no longer rush into relationships just to fill a void. They'd rather wait for someone who adds to their life rather than someone who distracts them from it. In relationships, older men tend to prioritize quality over quantity. They value presence over performance. They want genuine moments, not superficial routines. Their love language becomes consistency, not constant excitement. Because they understand how precious time is, they only invest it in relationships that have purpose, harmony, and honesty. And when they do give their time to someone, it's one of the most sincere gifts they can offer because they know it's something they'll never get back. For them, love isn't about possession. It's about choosing to share their limited time with someone who truly matters. Older single men carry with them a mix of scars and wisdom that profoundly shapes the way they approach love and relationships. These men have lived through experiences that have tested their strength, heartbreaks that taught them vulnerability, betrayals that taught them caution, and losses that taught them gratitude. Every scar tells a story, but instead of letting pain make them bitter, many of these men use it to become better. They've learned that love isn't about perfection or fantasy. It's about connection, understanding, and growth. Their maturity allows them to love more deeply, but also more realistically. When an older man has been through emotional pain, he doesn't forget it, he learns from it. He understands that people aren't perfect and that relationships take work, patience, and forgiveness. But he also knows his limits. His past has shown him the cost of ignoring red flags, the weight of emotional imbalance, and the emptiness of chasing something that's not meant to last. This wisdom helps him approach relationships with both an open heart and a guarded mind. He's not closed off, he's cautious. He doesn't give love recklessly anymore because he knows the value of emotional energy and how important it is to give it to the right person. This kind of man doesn't expect fairy tale romance. He values peace, respect, and loyalty. He understands that love is less about constant excitement and more about emotional safety. He's learned that consistency is far more meaningful than passion that burns fast and fades quickly. His scars remind him that love without trust or communication will always fail, no matter how strong the attraction. That's why he listens more, speaks with intention, and avoids unnecessary conflict. He's not interested in proving he's right. He's interested in preserving connection and clarity. Older single men also tend to be more emotionally grounded because of what they've endured. They don't run away at the first sign of discomfort, but they also don't tolerate repeated disrespect. Their experiences have taught them balance, knowing when to fight for something and when to walk away. They've learned that silence can sometimes speak louder than arguments, and that self-control is a sign of strength, not weakness. Their love is no longer impulsive or desperate. It's calm, patient, and deliberate. When they finally meet someone who truly understands them, they love with quiet intensity. They may not show affection through constant words, but through action, reliability, and presence. Their loyalty runs deep because they know how rare genuine connection is. They won't play games or waste time pretending. They're too wise for that. Their scars have softened them, not hardened them. They've seen how fragile love can be, so when they choose to give it again, they give it sincerely. For an older single man, love isn't about escape or fantasy. It's about peace, partnership, and the rare beauty of being understood by someone who values the same depth he does.